President Trump's second impeachment trial starts Tuesday. I'm Adrienne Pedersen today on Up Front.
It's not uniting, it's vindictive, and it's divisive, and we shouldn't do it.
Republican Senator Ron Johnson on the former president's defense and whether acquittal is all but guaranteed. Then, the governor and lawmakers continue to battle over the order creating the mask mandate just as COVID numbers start to fall. And why some Republicans say Wisconsin should divvy up its electoral votes.
Taking on the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with your host, Adrienne Pedersen.
Thank you for joining us. History will be made again in the nation's capital this week as the Senate meets for Donald Trump's second impeachment trial. The trial starts Tuesday. The former president is charged with inciting an insurrection on January 6th. That's when a mob of his supporters broke into the Capitol to disrupt the electoral vote count. Democrats say a trial is necessary to hold the former president accountable, but some Senate Republicans, including Wisconsin's Ron Johnson, have argued the second impeachment is unconstitutional. All this is happening as President Biden and Democrats look to go it alone and muscle through a new $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. We're talking now with Senator Ron Johnson. And I do want to start with impeachment here. So we had Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin on the show a few weeks ago. She believes this trial is constitutional, and so does a group of bipartisan constitutional scholars. About 150 of them say it is. They say because of text and structure of the Constitution, history, and precedent. So what are you seeing that they're not?
Well, first of all, I think there are experts on the other side. I would agree with the others that say it's not constitutional. You don't have a sitting president, you have a former president, but to lay the constitutional question aside and just ask yourself the question, is this a good thing to do? Is this wise? President Biden, his inaugural address, talked about healing, talked about unifying this country. Is an impeachment trial of a former president, is that healing? Is that going to unify? I would argue, no, it's very vindictive, it's very divisive. And we need to heal. We need to come together. We have enormous challenges facing this nation, and an impeachment trial of a former president is not part of the solution.
But isn't the basis of your argument that it's not constitutional?
It's certainly one of the points, but I would go above and beyond that and just say this is not a good thing to do. There's no reason to do this, and we shouldn't do it.
Well, and you say there's no reason to do this, but I mean, the Democrats would say the reason to do this is so that President Trump can't run for office again.
Well, there would be one of the areas of the constitutionality that I would question. You know, on January 6th, you know, after the breach of the Capitol, we still came together as a Congress and we collectively decided that it would not be smart, it would not be wise to overrule the wishes of the voters, to disenfranchise them by having Congress disallow electoral votes. And I voted against disallowing electoral votes. And that was the right thing to do. And so why would we think it would be a smart thing to do or constitutional to, ahead of time, to preemptively disenfranchise voters or overrule voters? This would be, whether or not President Trump runs again for office should be a decision that President Trump makes, and whether or not he would be successful at it would be decided by the voters.
Couldn't then a president just do whatever he or she wanted at the end of their term and not have consequences if you can't go ahead with a trial with someone who's out of office?
Listen, if he has some legal liability, charges can be brought up through the justice system. But an impeachment is an impeachment of a sitting president. An impeachment trial is, and I just don't believe that's constitutional.
Well, when it comes to getting Republicans on board with this, as you know, 17 Republicans would need to join all Democrats to convict the former president. Obviously, that's going to be, I mean, probably all but impossible. But I know that you and other senators.
So why do it? I mean, you're just making my case for me. We know the result.
But what I'm asking is,
Senator Paul
there
had
any
a constitutional point of order. 45 Republicans. We said, we came down the side that's unconstitutional. I have a hard time believing any of those people that think it's an unconstitutional trial are going to vote to convict. So why go through this process?
But then you still said as a true jurist,
you want to be vindictive and you want to divide.
Senator Johnson, you've still said, though, as a true jurist, that you can't fully make up your mind until you hear all the evidence. So do you think there's anything that could come out in a trial that would change the minds of 17 Republicans?
Well, did the House take a very careful look at this in 52 hours of their impeachment process? It's not exactly been a very careful due process. This is a political exercise. It's not meant to heal and unify. It's divisive. It's vindictive. I just say we shouldn't do it.
Should the president, I know you're saying we shouldn't go ahead with this at all, but, it's going ahead. So should the president testify? Do you want to hear from him?
That would be up to him. It sounds like he's not going to do it.
And would you have any interest in what he had to say if he did or if he was subpoenaed?
It's up to him. Again, when you're put on trial, it's up to you whether or not you want to testify in your behalf, and they'll be up to him.
When it comes to the relief package, I mean, this, Democrats have approved a measure that would let them pass President Biden's COVID package without Republicans. Is there anything in that package that you do support?
Well, listen, there's no doubt that there are people still hurting from COVID. I think the way we've handled the whole pandemic has been insane. We should have actually followed the Swedish model where you isolate the sick, you quarantine them, you protect the vulnerable, and then the rest of us go carry on with our lives as safely as possible. That would have been a more rational approach because the human toll of the economic devastation. We had Dr. Bhattacharya on, who wrote the Great Barrington Declaration. 130 million people is a World Health Organization estimate of people who are going to starve because of the economic devastation of the way we've handled the pandemic. I would just argue that we have not done a very good job of really handling this pandemic.
But looking forward, is there anything in the relief package you support?
Well, so the point being is we've already authorized $4 trillion. That's about 18 to 19% of our GDP. And the fact that we still have people that are hurting, I would look more toward what we've already done. And by the way, we don't even know what's unspent or what's unobligated. I know when we were talking about a package before August, it was OMB that gave me the information that there's $1.2 trillion of that amount of the $3.5 trillion that was still unspent, unobligated. So we're still in that same position. We just passed $900 billion. $600 billion of that was unspent, unobligated. Part of that is still unspent, unobligated. And here we are going for another $1.9 trillion. There's an excellent article written by former Senator Phil Gramm that ran the Wall Street Journal last week talking about the dangers of overheating our economy. Our economy is just going to take off. There is such pent-up demand. So much of what we did provide in terms of direct payments was saved or paid off debt. Only 18% was spent on essential spending. So again, we have just misspent $4 trillion that we don't have, that we're mortgaging our children's future, and now we're going to misspend another $1.9 trillion. Now, listen, when you spend trillions of dollars, it will go to help people, no doubt about it. But we don't have an unlimited checking account, and we're not being careful at all. We're not doing oversight. We're not stopping and considering, is there a better way of doing this? And that's why I'm basically opposing the $1.9 trillion. I think it's very unwise.
I mean, new job numbers came out Friday, and they're really grim. I know in the past you've blocked $1,200 stimulus checks. President Biden just said he won't cut the size of the checks. He wants to keep that $1,400. What do you think of that?
So let me give you the facts on this. So at the depth of the recession, of the COVID recession, there were 25 million jobs lost from a record high number of jobs. Right now, we're about 9 million jobs lost. When we send out these direct payment checks, they go out to 166 million Americans. Again, 9 million jobs are lost right now, checks to 166 million Americans, about 115 million households. And again, we don't have an unlimited checking account. I think we're $28 trillion in debt right now. Another $1.9 trillion will put us up to $30 trillion with an economy that's about $21 trillion. This is dangerous territory, but very few people are really concerned about it. I am concerned about it.
You can see my entire 17-minute interview on our website, where we talk about the threat of domestic terrorism, and the senator takes several swings at what he calls the mainstream media.
I think in general, the mainstream media is biased to the left, and that's pretty undeniable.
That's on the upfront section of WISN.com. There's confusion over the state mask mandate as Republican lawmakers and the Democratic governor battle it out. Next, a top Wisconsin epidemiologist on the impact dropping a mask mandate could have on our state. Plus, how we're doing compared to other states when it comes to the vaccine rollout.